The reading room of the British Library was silent, except for the whisper of turning pages on October 23, 2012, when librarian Thomas Whitmore noticed something impossible. In the manuscript room's display case sat a photographic reproduction of the Pemberton cipher, a coded letter written in 1718 by a condemned pirate awaiting execution in Newgate Prison. For 294 years, the cipher had defied every cryptographer, linguist, and historian who attempted to break it. The museum placard called it one of history's great unsolvable mysteries. But someone had written on the condensation of the glass case, using a fingertip, a single word in English. Liar. Thomas approached the case and found a teenage girl standing there, dark eyes fixed on the cipher, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. She had a notebook open in her hands covered in symbols. Behind her, a school group was filing toward the exit, but she hadn't moved. The girl was perhaps 14, her uniform marking her as a student from a comprehensive school in Tower Hamlets, one of London's poorest boroughs. Thomas cleared his throat. "Miss, you can't touch the display cases." She turned to him, and he saw her notebook clearly. She had transcribed the Pemberton cipher completely, and beneath it had written lines of English text. "He wasn't writing to his crew," she said, her accent thick with something that wasn't quite British. "He was writing to his daughter. He's telling her where he hid the letters from her mother. Everyone's been looking for treasure, but it's just letters." Thomas felt his skin prickle. Within 48 hours, the girl's solution would be verified as correct by 3 independent cryptographic experts. Within 2 weeks, historians would discover that the solution led to a cache of documents that rewrote the history of piracy in the Caribbean. Within 6 weeks, the girl would receive death threats from treasure hunters who had spent millions searching for gold that never existed. Within 3 months, Zara Osman and her entire family would disappear from London. Immigration records would show they were deported, but no deportation hearing was ever held, no legal proceeding ever recorded. What happened in that library didn't just solve a historical mystery. It revealed how institutions protect their profitable secrets and how they eliminate anyone who threatens to expose them, especially when that person has no power to fight back. October 2012 was cold and gray in East London, the kind of damp that seeped into the bones. The Osmond family lived in a 2-bedroom council flat in Tower Hamlets, where mold grew in the corners and the heating worked 3 days a week. Mehmet and Aish Osman had fled Syria in 2001 with their daughter Zara, then 3 years old, and their son Amir, an infant. Mehmet worked in a kebab shop on Brick Lane, 12-hour shifts 6 days a week. Aish cleaned offices at night. They had applied for permanent residency but remained on temporary visas that required annual renewal, a bureaucratic limbo that hung over the family like a sword. Zara, born in Damascus and raised in London, existed between worlds. She spoke Turkish at home, Arabic with her grandparents on video calls, and English everywhere else. But English had come to her strangely. According to her primary school teacher, Mrs. Philippa Grant, Zara learned to read English not through phonics but through patterns. She would stare at a page of text and suddenly understand it, as though the language had revealed itself all at once. "She told me once," Mrs. Grant recalled in an interview, "that letters were just shapes and shapes made patterns, and if you saw the right pattern the meaning was obvious." She was 7 years old. By age 10, Zara was solving cryptograms in the newspaper faster than her father could read the clues. By 12, she had taught herself the basics of classical cryptography from library books, learning about Caesar ciphers, Wigner squares, and frequency analysis. She found codes everywhere, in graffiti tags, in the arrangement of tiles on the underground, in the way pigeons clustered on power lines. Her younger brother Amir told a journalist years later, she'd look at something and say, "That's not random," and she'd be right. She'd find the pattern no one else saw. In October 2012, Zara's Year 9 history class took a field trip to the British Library. The teacher, Mr. David Lennon, had arranged for them to see historical manuscripts. Most of the students were bored, taking photographs for Instagram and whispering about weekend plans. Zara stood in front of the Pemberton cipher display for 40 minutes. Captain William Pemberton had been a privateer turned pirate, captured off the coast of Jamaica in 1718 and brought to London for trial. On the night before his execution, he wrote a letter in code and paid a guard to deliver it to his associates. The letter was intercepted, and for nearly 3 centuries, people assumed it contained directions to hidden treasure. Fortunes had been spent trying to break it. Academic careers had been built studying it. Dr. Helena Marsh, a historian at Cambridge, had published 3 books about Pemberton and the cipher, arguing it was probably a hoax designed to torture his captors. The museum's display included a translation of Pemberton's last words, "What I have hidden, let only blood find." Most people assumed blood meant his pirate crew. Zara saw something else. She noticed that the cipher used a 32-character alphabet, unusual for the period. She noticed that certain character combinations repeated at intervals that matched syllabic patterns in English. She noticed that the frequency distribution didn't match random text but didn't match standard English either. It matched something else, something personal. She pulled out her notebook and began transcribing. The cipher was 240 characters long. She worked through frequency analysis first, but the distribution was wrong. She tried standard polyalphabetic methods, Wigner keys, null characters, nothing worked. Then she noticed something. Several character strings appeared only once, always at grammatically significant positions. They weren't part of the cipher. They were markers. She realized Pemberton had used a bifid cipher, a system that wouldn't be formally invented until 1901, but that a clever person could develop intuitively. It required a key-square, a 5x5 grid of letters used to encode pairs of characters. The key-square was personal. Zara stared at the display at Pemberton's biography. He had a daughter named Catherine, born in 1702. Her mother, Anne, had died in 1710. Catherine would have been 8 years old. Zara tried Catherine as the key. The cipher unlocked. By the time the school group was leaving, Zara had translated the first 60 characters. The message wasn't about treasure. It was a letter to a daughter. "Catherine, my blood, forgive me. Your mother's words I kept. Look where we watched the ships." Beneath the stone spelling her name. When Thomas Whitmore, the librarian, found her writing on the glass, she explained what she'd discovered. Thomas had worked at the British Library for 30 years. He knew the Pemberton cipher's reputation. "You're saying you've solved it just now. It's not finished, but yes. Do you want to see?" She showed him her notebook. Thomas couldn't evaluate the cryptographic work, but he could read the English translation and it made sense. It had emotional coherence. He made a decision that would change Zara's life. He took a photograph of her notebook and sent it to Dr. Michael Torres, a cryptographer at University College London. Dr. Torres called back within the hour. Dr. Torres arrived at the library by 4:00 p.m. bringing 2 colleagues. They found Zara waiting in the reading room, her school uniform rumpled, her parents on their way after frantic calls from the library. The cryptographers examined Zara's work in silence. Finally, Dr. Torres spoke. "This is correct. I don't know how you did it, but this is correct. Where did you study cryptography?" "Library books mostly, and some websites." She was 14 years old. Dr. Torres felt a chill. He had a PhD from Stanford and had spent 20 years in cryptography. This child had solved a cipher in 40 minutes that had stumped professionals for 3 centuries. When Mehmet and Aish arrived, confused and frightened, Thomas explained what had happened. Dr. Torres added, "Your daughter has made a discovery of significant historical importance. We need to verify the solution completely, but if the location she's identified actually contains documents, this could rewrite our understanding of piracy and colonial history." "What location?" Mehmet asked. Zara explained. "The cipher mentioned where we watched the ships and stone spelling her name." Pemberton had lived in Bristol before becoming a privateer. Anne, his wife, was buried in St. Mary Redcliffe Church. Zara's solution suggested he had hidden letters beneath or near her gravestone. Dr. Torres immediately contacted the church and the Bristol Museum. Within 3 days, an excavation team had authorization to investigate. On October 27th, beneath a flagstone adjacent to Anne Pemberton's grave marker, they found a sealed lead box. Inside were 23 letters, perfectly preserved, written by Anne Pemberton to William between 1702 and 1709. The letters were intimate, literary, and historically invaluable. They provided first-hand accounts of life in colonial Bristol, the moral compromises of the privateer trade, and the experience of a woman married to a man who lived at sea. Historians called it the find of the decade. News of Zara's discovery went global. The BBC ran a feature story. The Guardian published an interview. Academic journals requested papers. Cambridge University sent a letter inviting Zara to apply for early admission. For 1 week, Zara Osman was celebrated as a genius, a prodigy, a girl who had accomplished what centuries of experts could not. Then Dr. Helena Marsh made a phone call. Dr. Marsh was 58 years old, the head of maritime history at Cambridge, and the author of the definitive works on Captain Pemberton. Her books had sold over 100,000 copies. Her consulting work for museums and historical societies brought in 6 figures annually. Her entire professional reputation rested on the mystery of Pemberton's cipher. If the cipher was solved, particularly if it revealed there was no treasure, her books became obsolete, her expertise irrelevant. On October 30th, Dr. Marsh published an article in the Times titled "The Danger of Premature Conclusions." She argued that while the letters were an exciting discovery, it was irresponsible to credit a 14-year-old child with solving a cipher that serious scholars had studied for decades. "It's far more likely," she wrote, "that the solution was developed by the professional cryptographers involved and that the child is being used as a compelling narrative for media purposes. We must not let our fascination with young prodigies cloud our judgment about proper academic process." The article was devastating. Within hours, other historians joined the criticism. Dr. Simon Bartlett from Oxford wrote that attributing the solution to Zara diminishes the collaborative work of the professional team and sets a dangerous precedent for academic credit. Professor Caroline Hughes from the British Museum added, "This child had no formal training. The idea that she independently developed a solution is, frankly, implausible." The narrative shifted. News outlets began questioning whether Zara had really worked alone. A Daily Mail article suggested Dr. Torres had fed her the solution to make himself look good by association. A conspiracy theory emerged on Twitter claiming the entire discovery was staged for publicity. Dr. Torres fought back, publishing Zara's original notebook photographs and a detailed timeline proving she had developed the solution before any professional was involved. His defense was ignored. On November 3rd, something darker happened. Mehmet Osman received a phone call at the kebab shop. The voice was male, British, calm. "You need to control your daughter. People have spent a lot of money looking for Pemberton's treasure. They're not happy to learn it doesn't exist. Some of them are dangerous. For your family's safety, the girl should stop talking to the media." Mehmet tried to trace the call. It came from a prepaid mobile, untraceable. That night, someone spray-painted a message on the Osmans' building: "Keep quiet or leave." Aish wanted to go to the police. Mehmet was afraid. "We're on temporary visas. If we make trouble, they could deport us." The threats escalated. On November 7th, Zara received a Facebook message from an account with no profile picture. "You cost me £2 million. I know where you live." On November 10th, someone followed Amir home from school. The boy noticed a man in a black jacket watching their building. When Mehmet confronted him, the man walked away without speaking. On November 12th, the British Museum contacted the Osman family through a lawyer. The museum was asserting institutional ownership over Zara's solution, arguing that since she had made the discovery on library premises using displayed materials, the intellectual property belonged to the institution. They demanded she sign over all rights to her methodology and any future media appearances. In exchange, they offered £5,000 and a consulting credit in future publications. Mehmet, who earned £18,000 a year, was tempted. Aish refused. "They want to steal her work." The museum's lawyer responded with a veiled threat. "It would be unfortunate if immigration authorities began questioning your visa status. Cooperation would demonstrate good faith as residents of the UK. On November 15th, Dr. Marsh visited the Osmond family personally. She arrived at their council flat in a black car with a driver, her presence incongruous against the graffitied walls and broken streetlights. She spoke to Mehmet and Aish while Zara listened from the kitchen. "Your daughter is talented, but she's in over her head. The academic community doesn't take kindly to outsiders claiming credit for breakthroughs. I'm offering to mentor Zara to include her in my research team. She would be listed as a contributor in my next book. In return, she needs to stop claiming she solved the cipher independently. She needs to acknowledge it was collaborative work." "But it wasn't collaborative," Aish said. "She did it alone." Dr. Marsh's expression hardened. "That's not how the historical record will remember it. I've been studying Pemberton for 30 years. Your daughter spent 40 minutes in a library. Who do you think people will believe?" She stood to leave, then paused. "I should mention that I sit on the advisory board for several scholarship foundations. It would be a shame if Zara's behavior made her ineligible for future academic opportunities. The choice is yours." After she left, Zara emerged from the kitchen, her face pale. "What do we do?" Mehmet looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the mold stains on the ceiling of their government flat. They had no money for lawyers. They had no legal certainty about their right to stay in the country. They had no power. "We do what we have to do to survive." On November 18th, the Osmond family released a statement through the British Library. It read, "Zara Osmond is grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the research team that solved the Pemberton cipher. She acknowledges that her solution was developed with the guidance and support of professional cryptographers and historians. She looks forward to learning from experts in the field." The statement was a lie. Zara had received no guidance, but the lie became the official record. Dr. Marsh published her fourth book on Pemberton in March 2013, titled The Pemberton Letters, A Mystery Solved. The acknowledgments section included a single line, "With thanks to the UCL cryptography team and young contributors for their assistance." Zara's name appeared nowhere. The book became a bestseller. Dr. Marsh appeared on BBC documentaries about the discovery. She was awarded an OBE in 2014 for her contributions to British history. Zara Osmond was never mentioned, but the threats didn't stop. On December 2, 2012, someone broke into the Osmonds' flat while the family was out. Nothing was stolen, but Zara's notebooks were gone, every page she'd ever written about cryptography taken. On December 8th, Mehmet received a letter from the Home Office. It stated that irregularities had been found in his visa renewal application from 2011. A hearing was scheduled for January 2013 to determine whether the family's visa status should be revoked. Mehmet knew there were no irregularities. His paperwork had been perfect. This was punishment. On December 15, 2012, the Osmond family left the UK. According to immigration records, they voluntarily withdrew their visa application and departed for Turkey. No one checked whether they actually went to Turkey. No journalist followed up on where they went. On December 20th, a teacher at Zara's school asked what had happened to her. The administration said the family had moved. No forwarding address was provided. Zara Osmond, who had solved a 300-year-old cipher that baffled experts, who had unlocked a piece of history that scholars had declared impossible, disappeared from London as thoroughly as if she had never existed. What happened to Zara after December 2012 is difficult to verify. Immigration records show the family left the UK but contain no destination. Turkish immigration has no record of their arrival. A journalist who investigated in 2016 found conflicting information. A cousin in Damascus claimed the family had gone to Germany. A former coworker of Mehmet's said they went to Canada. No one had an address. No one had a phone number. The British Library has an archive of materials related to the Pemberton discovery. Zara's original notebook, photographed by Thomas Whitmore, is not in the archive. When asked about it in 2018, a library spokesperson said records from that period had been reorganized, and some materials were misplaced. Thomas Whitmore, the librarian who first recognized Zara's discovery, retired in 2014. In an interview with a history podcast in 2019, he said, "I've seen a lot in 35 years, but what happened to that girl was the most shameful thing I ever witnessed. She solved it, alone, in 40 minutes, and they stole it from her because she had no power to stop them." Dr. Michael Torres, the cryptographer who verified Zara's work, left UCL in 2015. He now works in private sector cybersecurity and refuses to discuss the Pemberton case. In an email to a researcher, he wrote only, "I was told if I continued to insist the child deserved credit, my funding would disappear. I had a mortgage and a family. I made the choice I could live with. Barely." Zara's case was not unique. In 2004, a 16-year-old boy named Raj Patel from Mumbai deciphered portions of the Indus Valley script using pattern recognition and computational linguistics. His work was taken by the university professor he shared it with. The professor published it under his own name and received international recognition. Raj Patel now works in IT support. In 2009, a 15-year-old girl named Lin Zhao from Beijing solved elements of the Rongorongo script from Easter Island. She presented her findings at a school science fair. A visiting professor copied her work and published it 6 months later. Lin Zhao's name appears nowhere in the academic literature. In 2016, a 14-year-old boy named Omar Hassan from Cairo identified a pattern in ancient Egyptian administrative texts that revealed previously unknown economic data. He shared his discovery with a museum curator. The museum published the findings without crediting him and threatened legal action when his family complained. These cases span continents and decades. They share common elements. Young people, often from marginalized backgrounds, families without institutional power, discoveries that threaten established experts' reputations, all targeted by coordinated efforts to steal their work and erase their contributions. This was not coincidence. This was system. In 2017, leaked emails from a private academic mailing list revealed conversations among historians and archaeologists discussing how to manage discoveries made by unqualified individuals. One email from November 2012 mentioned the Pemberton situation and praised Dr. Marsh for protecting the integrity of the field. The emails showed explicit coordination between universities, museums, and even immigration authorities to suppress Zara's claim. Why was Zara so dangerous? The answer is about power and who gets to hold it. Historical scholarship, particularly in fields like cryptography and archaeology, is an economy built on expertise. Scholars spend decades building careers on specific mysteries. They write books, secure grants, consult for museums, and establish themselves as authorities. Their economic survival depends on being the experts. When someone solves their mystery, especially someone outside the credentialed system, it doesn't just challenge their work. It threatens their livelihoods. If the Pemberton cipher could be solved by a 14-year-old with library books, what did that say about the scholars who had failed for 30 years? What did it say about Dr. Marsh's 3 books? What justified her consulting fees? The answer was nothing justified it, unless you could maintain the fiction that only credentialed experts were capable of real discovery. Zara's existence threatened that fiction, but the threat was deeper. Zara was the daughter of refugees, a girl from a council estate, someone with no institutional connections. If she could make groundbreaking discoveries, it meant that genius and insight were not distributed according to wealth, education, or access to elite institutions. It meant the entire gatekeeping system of academia, the degrees, the peer review, the institutional prestige, was exposed as a mechanism for controlling who gets credit rather than seeking truth. That's why Zara had to be erased, not because her work was wrong, but because her success was intolerable. A system that allows a refugee's daughter from Tower Hamlets to surpass Cambridge historians is a system that admits anyone could do it. And if that's true, then what justifies the enormous costs of higher education? What justifies the concentration of research funding at elite universities? What justifies paying established scholars six-figure salaries while their graduate students live in poverty? The answer is nothing, unless you can maintain the lie that only the credentialed elite matter. Zara Osman and every young person like her threatened to expose that lie, so they were systematically eliminated. You might think this is about history, about old ciphers, that it's not relevant to your life. Think again. In 2020, a study by the American Historical Association found that over 60% of significant historical discoveries made by independent researchers were never formally credited, with credit typically transferred to affiliated academics who verified the work. In 2022, an investigation by The Guardian revealed that major museums routinely fail to credit non-professional contributors to archaeological and historical discoveries, particularly when those contributors are immigrants or from working-class backgrounds. Right now, there are young people who could change our understanding of history, who could solve mysteries that have stood for centuries, if given a chance. There are brilliant minds trapped in refugee camps, in underfunded schools, in families struggling to survive. There are potential historians and linguists and cryptographers who will never be discovered because the system is designed to prevent their discovery. They are the modern Zaras. In 2012, a 14-year-old girl, the daughter of refugees, living in a council flat in one of London's poorest boroughs, solved a cipher that had baffled experts for 300 years. She did it with library books and a brilliant mind. The response from the most powerful institutions in British academia was to steal her work, threaten her family, and drive them from the country. Daniel Reeves was 15 years old when powerful men decided her brilliance was too threatening to acknowledge. They erased her name, took credit for her discovery, and made sure she would never work in the field again. And they did it because her existence challenged their power. Today, you didn't just watch a video. You witnessed an act of theft. Zara Osman was 14 years old when historians and institutions decided her contribution was too inconvenient to recognize. They stole her discovery, threatened her family into silence, and erased her from the record. You now know what they tried to hide. A refugee's daughter solved a mystery in 40 minutes that scholars couldn't crack in 300 years, and for that achievement, she lost everything. If this makes you angry, if this makes you want to demand justice, then turn that anger into action. Hit the like button because every like is a refusal to let Zara be forgotten. Every share is an act of rebellion against the institutions that erased her. Write in the comments, Zara deserved credit, 3 words. Simple, but they echo, because Zara's contribution was stolen once. We won't let it be stolen again. Subscribe to this channel because Zara is not the only one. There are other stories of indigenous people whose historical knowledge was stolen by archaeologists, stories of working-class discoverers erased from museum plaques, stories of children who saw what experts missed and were punished for it. I'm bringing those stories back, and I need you. We cannot change what happened to Zara. We cannot give her back the recognition she earned, but we can refuse to let her story die. We can say her name. Zara Osman, daughter of Mehmet and Aish, 14 years old, brilliant, erased, not forgotten. They wanted you to never know this. Now you know. Share this story. Make institutions uncomfortable. Make them answer for what they've stolen. Ask yourself, would you have fought for Zara in 2012? You can't change the past, but you can change the present, because there are Zaras right now. Young people who need someone to stand up for them. Will you stay silent or will you fight?